The judge even went on later on to say, if you leave like blood or fingerprints at a crime scene, you're the criminal. Now you're running away, you're in hiding. You have no right to privacy in what you leave at a crime scene, your fingerprints, your DNA, a footprint, whatever. You have no right to privacy in that whatsoever. So therefore, the whole thing, it's a great argument by Ann Taylor. She is trying her hardest. She is doing everything she's required to do. She is, zealously advocating for her client. So he is actually getting excellent, legal representation in this case. But in the end, she knows that, she's got to know this is probably not going to go anywhere, but she's doing the best she can. But he has no expectations of privacy. In that crime scene, he has no expectations of privacy, as the judge was talking about, in a search of someone else's DNA database. None whatsoever.
Truth Seeker from the chat. How did the DNA double in size after the FBI received it? There are techniques where the DNA, the sample, can be replicated to make the sample larger. And that's the most simple way I can explain it to you. I can't explain it in the scientific terms, but I believe it's through polymerase chain reaction. They're able to expand the DNA from the simple sample, just make the sample larger using the same sample. I hope that answers your question. Let me go back to the hearing for a quick, and then we'll get back to this.
Simply because I might share some genetic information with them because they are distantly related to me.
Well, Your Honor, our position is that this work was not done lawfully, that it was unlawful, that there needed to be a warrant, that this was done outside of a warrant. And I'm not asserting on behalf of anybody else in this, any relative, anybody who might have been named or not named.
For its part, the prosecution says Bryan Kohberger's Fourth Amendment rights are what matter here, and the state says those rights were not violated.
Even assuming that that's all correct and that they violated the terms.
Seems to be the evidence.
The terms of service, Your Honor, don't affect the Fourth Amendment. The terms of service, and certainly Mr. Kohberger does not have standing to raise a violation of the terms of service. And even if he did, the remedy for the terms of service is not a violation of the Fourth Amendment. As we argued in our brief, the individuals, and as came out in testimony today, the individuals who are utilizing these databases, and we're talking about millions of them, are willingly sharing their information with each other, with millions of other people.
Isn't there a subset that says, but I don't want these people to look at it?
In some of the data,
the FBI, as I understand the evidence, then says, okay, we agree, we won't search those ones.
So I'll address that part, but on the database piece, the issue is that no one sharing this information with millions of other people could have a reasonable expectation of privacy. The test for that isn't, do they have a reasonable expectation of privacy against law enforcement? It's against the public writ large.
Judge Hippler has been presiding over this.
So I don't think that, again, and we're talking about the gist of this whole thing. Will this judge suppress the DNA evidence? And based on what I see at these hearings, no. He's not going to suppress the DNA evidence. I don't think he was. And again, Mike, you said it. I said it. Ann Taylor is doing the very best job she can in advocating for her client, but there's no case law. There's no precedence for this. And to call each one of these DNA techniques, PCR, polymerase chain reaction, let's call that a separate search. No, it's not. It's a technique used. They already have the search warrant. They already have the necessary legal documentation. So I don't believe, and I believe you think the same, that the judge is going to rule in her favor. I just don't see it.
Yeah, Bill, they got the search warrant for the crime scene. Anything that they find in that crime scene, fingerprints, phone evidence, whatever they find, DNA, whatever, blood evidence. Once you get that search warrant for that crime scene, then you bring in the technicians and then you do your testing, and that's great. You do not need a separate warrant. But we talked about this earlier. I was joking around about ballistics. Say you find a firearm at the crime scene, and you get your search warrant. You find a crime scene, a gun at the crime scene. You test it by shooting it through a pool of water. and you don't like the results. You take it and you fire it into ballistics gel. You do not need separate, search warrants for each of the tests that you do once you've got the crime scene, search warrant. So therefore, that idea, she's just throwing it out there. She's hoping something will stick with Judge Hippler, but that's her job. She's advocating every possible theoretical argument that she could make for the Fourth Amendment and his alleged right to privacy violation, because she desperately needs that DNA to be thrown out. Without that DNA, the case is much different. With the DNA, it's as close to a slam dunk as you can possibly get. You don't know what'll happen, but it's really amazingly convincing that they didn't think that the jury's going to hear that, and that they're going to decide whether or not he's, by proof beyond a reasonable doubt, that he is actually the person who committed the crime. So it makes the jury much easier to get a guilty verdict when you have the DNA coming in.
This is from the Daily Mail, and the detective, the retired detective here, is a NYPD former crime scene, first grade detective by the name of Matt Steiner, who I had the pleasure of working with on numerous cases when I was on the NYPD.
In this case, we have a witness that lives on the second floor of that location. She hears something going on during the time of the attack. This sort of evidence is what they call testimonial evidence. In any trial, you're going to have physical evidence and testimonial evidence. Testimonial evidence is what people say. What does my witness say? What does my victim say? What does my suspect say? They could be telling you the truth, they could be mistaken, or they could be lying.